Hey, deserving listeners, The Ultimatum, Queer Love Season 2, Netflix. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Keep in mind, since this is a psychology YouTube channel, I might get into some triggering material. So watch out for that. And if you have particular sensitivities and you think I'm heading into an area that might be triggering, take care of yourself and consider not watching that section or talking with your therapist first. Let's watch.
I feel a lot better already.
Get another drink?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Come on. Let's go.
You okay?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
You smell nice.
Thanks, Mama.
You look so much better.
I do. I feel better, actually.
Yeah? Okay.
Okay. So, is the audience going to identify Dana as the jerk face that everyone agrees is the jerk face? In terms of the edit, it's kind of heading in that direction. I mean, I don't know. We'll see. But, okay. So, if you aren't aware of what's happening right here, we have Megan and AJ who are dating to see if, or sorry, yeah, right. Megan and AJ are dating to see if they are going to do the trial marriage together. And Dana comes over during their second cocktail party and is very intimate. You know, it'd be different if Dana came over to the two of them and say, "Hey, you two, how's it going?" But that's not what Dana did. Dana came in for a very couples hug and kiss. You smell nice right in front of AJ. And AJ is now, you know, maybe everyone rolls with it. It's certainly understandable that Dana would want to connect with her ex or her person, but you would just think that you would refrain or not do it right in the middle of a conversation between Megan and AJ. And I'm adding another minor yellow flag to Dana. You know, we only see an edited version, but I don't remember seeing another person do something like this. You know, I could be forgetting, but I mean, I could see like Vanessa from season 1 doing something like this, at least from my memory. But yeah, yikes.
Get another drink?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Come on. Let's go.
You okay?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay. Yeah, I'm good.
And it kind of looks like Megan is uncomfortable at the very least, if not also sort of trying to get this over with. Yeah, okay, so what would be going on with Dana here? I guess on the surface, we can't know. We can only speculate, hypothesize about what's her motivation here. But it's natural for anyone in Dana's shoes to feel jealous and to also just want to connect with the person that you love and want to spend the rest of your life with. You know, Dana is the one that gave the ultimatum, although they've only been dating for a year. But, you know, that's long enough for sure. Anyway, so there's some understandable feelings that could be happening. But, of course, Dana would recognize that she's the one that has been pressuring Megan to be on the show and wants to give it a legitimate effort, right? So, if anything, Dana should stay away from Megan so that Megan can feel the flexibility and the room to breathe so that she can start dating, because she knows that just the previous night Megan wanted to go home. So that, and also if you're Dana in her shoes, you would think that you would refrain from looking like a jealous, controlling person by coming over in the middle, or at least a rude person. And then what message is Dana trying to send? That she has possession? Uh-oh. Yeah, so there's, again, just these flags with just a hint of yellow of dominance and control and lack of empathy. I mean, not like a psychopath, but a pattern in which one does not take other people's feelings into consideration enough. You know, we're all on some spectrum there, and you know, maybe Dana has some trouble with that. that would fit well with an ultimate pleaser, the way that Megan describes herself. You know, someone who is very much a pleaser, doesn't know what she wants, and also just defaults to what everyone else wants for her. So she would pair up fairly easily with someone that was dominant and a bulldozer. It's very little indication, but I will say this is the first of the yellow flags from Dana that is notable, right? Now, who knows? You know, if you've watched ahead, I'll continue watching. Maybe this is anomalous for Dana. Maybe she'll apologize. Maybe they all do this kind of stuff at the cocktail party, and they're only including this one in the edit. I don't know, but it's notable, right?
You smell nice.
Thanks, Mama.
I mean, even if my wife was having a conversation and we weren't on this show, even if she was just talking to her friend, I wouldn't do what Dana is doing. Two people are having a conversation, and you just come in and you cut off the other person, and you're just like, oh, I love you, you smell nice. You know, it's at the very least awkward and rude to the other person. But given the scenario, and given that Dana has been pressuring her to be on the show, and Megan does not look comfortable, as she shouldn't be comfortable with this. And AJ also looks like, what is happening right now?
Look so much better.
I do. I feel better, actually.
Yeah? Okay. I'm gonna leave you alone because I feel like I should,
okay.
but I love you.
And then she acknowledges it, right? I feel like I should leave you alone because I should. Well, did that thought cross your mind before you came over? And then, I love you. Okay. Now, again, it's totally natural for someone in Dana's shoes to be jealous, to worry, to want to reach out just because you want to reach out to your partner. You know, you love each other. She wants to marry her, right? Totally natural. But the lack of differentiation for an individual who was very much wanting to come on the show, in all likelihood was the one that reached out to the marketing material, was the one that got Megan to commit to be on the show, was the one that convinced Megan last night to come on the show, pressured her. I mean, pressure is a strong word potentially, but really wanted her to be on the show. And you would just think that that would be enough to prevent you from coming over. So we have to ask ourselves, given that all that is true, why would she still go over there, right? Is it a lack of self-awareness? Is she intoxicated and isn't in her right mind? Is she having second thoughts? Is this I suppose we can add to the list. I hate having these speculations because it's denigrating, but it's also a go-to speculation that a lot of people have, particularly people who don't watch reality TV, in my opinion, is that she's just trying to make drama and they're not even in a real relationship. But, it's possible. Some people want Instagram careers and calculate that if they are one of the background players, they're not going to get the Instagram followers, so they have to stick out somehow, and they strategize this. We'll add it to the list, but I don't like thinking along those lines. But it's possible. Somehow that's like better than the alternative, which is that she's controlling and domineering and establishing her territory.
Let's talk real quick.
Come.
Let's just start with it. We've been here for a few hours. How can you not talk to me? When we're in these settings, you definitely behave differently than when we're alone. You act like you don't know me.
Well, that escalated quickly. Okay. Again, there's nothing wrong with Dana having some feelings about this. It's hard to relate to because we're not in her shoes. But for these individuals, they are in a chaotic situation, a fast-paced situation, because she just met Mel like a couple days ago. So to us, it'd be like, what's the problem here? But if you're Dana, you have connected with Mel, right? And are starting to depend on Mel's loyalty or attention. And maybe Dana's right here, that Mel behind closed doors is very nice, but at the cocktail party is a lot more standoffish, maybe hurtfully neglectful or something. I don't know. It didn't look that way from the edit, but we can't know. Having said all that, there's a lot of indications that Dana has something going on. I don't know what it is. It's tempting to cartoonize it and reduce it to this classic cartoonish presentation of a controlling, overly reactive rage machine. But I'm sure even if it's in that camp, it would be more nuanced than that, right? Everyone's an individual. So, but yeah, we're seeing potentially another indication that she's prone to anger and hostility and overreactivity and control, and who knows? But one of the two of the individuals mentioned their attachment style actually on the Netflix website, and those people are, I'm looking for them, was Dana and Megan. Okay, so Dana self-identifies as avoidant attachment, where Megan self-identifies as anxious attachment. Okay, at the very least, so self-diagnosing, it's not a diagnosis, but self-labeling or self-conceptualizationing among lay people is fraught, even when it comes to simple concepts like attachment style, which are relatively simple, but not simple really. But anyway, I'm more confident in self-identifying one's attachment style than other kinds of things like self-identifying as having ADHD or something. Certainly people can self-identify, but anyway, point is that I think what we're reading here is that Dana identifies as being avoidant attachment. Okay. This doesn't look like avoidant attachment to me. Now, what I encourage people to do, because sometimes if you're not quintessential avoidant or anxious, people will say, they'll ask me questions. I always get a lot of emails or comments from like, I feel like I'm a mix of avoidant and anxious. Does that mean that I'm the other one? Does that mean that I'm disorganized or fearful? And because sometimes it's framed that way, sometimes it's taught that way. In fact, years and years ago, I think I probably said that as a professor because that was what was being told to me. But the fourth attachment style of disorganized, fearful, is not a combination of the two. It's not in between. It's a completely other ball of wax, and it's complicated. And you listen to my deep dives, and I've talked about it before. Anyway, but when I hear people confused about what label, they're like, am I anxious or am I avoidant? What I tell people is it's much more useful to analyze where you are on the spectrum of insecurity versus security. And then once you can figure that out, then just take note of the way that you react to attachment threat. And don't worry about whether it's avoidant or fearful or disorganized or anxious or preoccupied, because it's a lot more useful to understand those concepts. So if you're more on the insecure side of the spectrum of attachment style, that means that you went through a lot of experiences that taught you that you don't have security in attachments, that attachments, relationships are not for sure, that even if they are around all the time, they're not attuned to you enough, they don't think about your feelings enough, they might be hurtful, they might be abusive to you. And so there's this mix of associations when it comes to attachment figures. They might be loving and warm, but also hurtful, neglectful, name-calling, abandoning, chaotic, whatever, So that gives us a template, an assumption about relationships that make us more sensitive to indicators of such, and might make us paranoid where we might see indicators when there aren't indicators. So for avoidant people, when they see indicators, they retreat into themselves. And for the anxious, preoccupied folks, they pursue. It's an overgeneralization, but it's one way of thinking about it, and often holds true when you actually get into the depth of it. But anyway, so for Dana and Megan, at the very least, what I'm hearing is that they're self-identifying as being on the insecure avoidance spectrum, right? They're not. They notice. Dana notices that she's not secure, and then as she sifts through all of her tendencies, she labels herself as avoidant. But I've seen this before where preoccupied people that I would label as preoccupied, or at least being mostly preoccupied, like 80% preoccupied, 20% avoidant or something, they will point to certain hallmarks of avoidant and self-label as avoidant because they don't understand how the overall pattern of attachment style manifests. So, for example, you can have a preoccupied person who by default leans in and signals and pursues, and they will burn out sometimes so much in relationships, in conflict, in insecurity, in feeling abandoned, that they will take breaks and they will say, "I'm done." They'll be the one that breaks up the relationship. They will take 2 years off of relationships, and so people on the outside and themselves, when they look on TikTok as to the simplistic way of describing things, they'll say, "Oh, I'm avoidant," but they're not. They're oriented towards pursuing and signaling. A pretty good differentiator between preoccupied anxious and avoidant dismissive is that preoccupied anxious people signal a lot. They can't help but to signal because neurologically it's argued that they developed as at the age of 1, 2, 3 years old. Neurologically, they see the world differently, they feel the world differently, and it amps up their emotions and makes the compulsion to share much greater for those individuals. It's almost like, depending on where they are on the spectrum of that, they can't help but to signal. It's overwhelmingly compulsive to just say something and to indicate. So this looks more like preoccupied attachment in that Dana is insecure about a lot of things, which are natural. That's the thing about attachment and security. All of the precipitating factors and the feelings thereof are normal and understandable and nearly universal, if not universal. In that, I'm just imagining, because I can't know, I'm just speculating, that for Dana, as with all 12 of them, in her shoes, she wants to do the experiment to, one, give Megan a chance to see what it's like on the other side of the fence so that hopefully Megan will learn it's not so great over there and choose to be with me and we can get married and stay together forever and I can feel secure. And I'm also curious about dating someone else and maybe I'll discover something that maybe I don't even want to be with Megan. I don't know. So this is a good clarifier experiment. I think at best, that's why people go on the show. So that's a normal feeling. So she is watching Megan across the room connect with someone, and she naturally has feelings about that. She also is trying to get with Mel, and it's a brand new dating relationship. There's a lot of insecurity. You don't know, does Megan really like me? And you know that she would go to bed the previous night, thinking, does Mel like me? Am I pretty enough? Am I good enough? Am I interesting enough? What's going to happen? Am I going to get rejected? It's normal, all normal. But for the preoccupied anxious people, when there's that normal threat, because those are attachment threats with Megan and to a lesser extent with Mel, right? That the preoccupied anxious people will signal. So what are we seeing? I don't know if this is where it's coming from, but if we're using it as a jumping off point, Dana signals by going to Megan, hugging her, and the overall messaging is, I'm exaggerating it for effect, is territorial establishment, right? I'm establishing territory. This is Megan's mine. AJ, you're talking to my thing. It's really exaggeratory, but it is a possibility that it literally is that or something akin to that. The impulse would be there for anyone, but the the compulsion, the overriding of your differentiation, the overriding of what you want. What she wants on the surface is to go on the show and give herself and her partner a chance to do the experiment, to clarify. This is when I talk about differentiation, which is related to all this, we often talk about goal-directed behavior. And for people who are more differentiated, they will set out on a goal, and when other competing factors, even from within themselves, come into play, they're more likely than not, more often over time, to be able to redirect themselves to the overall goal, right? But for less differentiated people, they lose sight of their goal, or the in-the-moment compulsion and reactivity will compel them so much that they say, I don't care about that goal anymore. And their lives are chaotic and kind of all over the place. So it kind of looks like that, right? I'm trying to remember if we heard anything about Dana's upbringing. I don't think we did, right? I would have taken notes on that. But then we see Dana having, again, a normal feeling like, is Mel into me? Maybe Mel was being a little bit more standoffish at the cocktail party. Dana has a normal feeling of concern or hurt or worry or jealousy or something. And maybe Dana has a history of someone behind closed doors being more affectionate than in public or something, stuff like that happens. Maybe even having a parent that was like that, more giving, and then you go, anyway. Or competition with siblings, I don't know, it's just speculative. But Dana has a normal feeling, but instead of self-regulating or toning it down a little bit, going to Mel and saying, I think a more differentiated person, a more attachment secure person, a more healed person, someone who's been through more therapy in Dana's shoes would say, I want to go over to Mel and confront her about the fact that she's been standoffish at the cocktail party. And then Dana would say, well, but I know enough about myself to know that I might be just making that up. I might be overreacting. Even if I am being accurate, that's really going to alienate Mel, and then I'll really be alone. Instead, what I'll do is I will really try to amp up my signaling to Mel that I want to be with her. Maybe she feels like I'm being standoffish, or maybe she's having trouble being inspired by our connection. Maybe I'll try to flirt a little bit more, or I'll pull her aside, or I'll connect or have longer. I mean, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't know if this is edited shenanigans, but Dana leaves Mel, walks across the room, hugs and kisses on the neck, I think, but at the very least, a very intimate hug to her ex. Meanwhile, Mel is watching, probably, right? Since Mel's left alone. Dana comes back. This is the edit, so maybe it's out of order, but this is what we're being presented. Dana comes over to Mel, immediately says, you've been standoffish with me. And so Special Mel's like, wait, so you go across the room and you get all lovey-dovey and cutesy right in front of me with your ex, and you come back at me and you tell me that what's going on? And it's also possible that Mel saw that and did start to pull back. And anyway, but what Dana, there's so many things Dana could have done, even if she had these, even if these thoughts were justified, which they might not be, right? Plus, if her goal is to get Mel to like her, which is the surface goal, like, hey, Mel, you're not paying attention to me. The request is pay more attention to me because I want to be with you or something, right? This is not the way to get someone to pay more attention to you. This is a way to alienate someone. This is a way to push someone away. If you're already having a fight within the first 36 hours of dating someone, anyone's going to get a little worried. Plus, it could snuff out whatever early flame that is starting to develop, right? So, and another aspect to this is that since we heard from Megan and Dana that Megan is a pushover and a pleaser and not assertive, that I've been wondering if Dana is complementary with that, the other side of the coin, domineering. It's possible that something like this happened in the beginning of their relationship between Dana and Megan. And Dana did this to Megan, and since Megan is a pleaser, Megan was like scrambled. Oh no, I'm sorry, that kind of stuff. What do you want me to do? I'm okay. I'll pay more attention to you. Whereas with Mel, Mel might not have any of that over pleasing tendency, and might say, "Well, fuck you." I don't want to be. So looking at Mel's my notes here, we have a fair amount on Mel because it's been in the edit more. She had trouble growing up. The overall theme that I'm hearing is chaos, maybe drug addiction in her parents. She had 4 women that she called mom that as soon as something went wrong between these stepmoms and her dad, I'm guessing, then the stepmoms abandoned her, never to see her again. She has been cut off from her family of origin since she was, I think, a teenager 10 years ago, and she's been living on her own since 16, Mel. So, maybe it's there's not a lot there, but every story that I've heard that has those topic sentences has drug addiction, chaos, just massive amounts of trauma, vulnerability to sexual assault. Who knows? Maybe none of that is true about Mel, but that's always what I've heard. I'll just tell you that. Now, I'm just one person with anecdotes, so don't take that as anything other than that. But and she's having trouble with the ultimatum from Marie, and Marie is a people pleaser. She mentioned that. Sometimes people think they're people pleasers, in which I would, but I wouldn't call them a people pleaser. Because everyone is somewhat of a people pleaser. Everyone is somewhat conflict avoidant. So, but what does that say about Mel? At the very least, if it's true that Marie is somewhat of a people pleaser, then in all likelihood, Mel is not on that spectrum, which would mean she probably won't react to this very well. I guess I kind of don't want her to react well to this. It wouldn't portend well for Mel if she did react well to this. Now, maybe there's a way out of this. Maybe Mel's like, you're right. I'm sorry. I haven't been very attentive, but I don't appreciate the tone. And then maybe Dana will say, oh, you're right. I'm sorry. Maybe there's a way out of this. I doubt it, but we'll see. Also, Mel mentioned, I didn't show this, that she experienced chronic pain. And she mentioned that when she was born, she almost died. So maybe it has something to do with health issues dating back to when she was born. I don't know. She seemed to be indicating that in her narrative. Either way, chronic pain, it sounds horrible. And she says that someday she doesn't want to get out of bed. That doesn't really say anything about her personality. It just is tragic and something that she's dealing with, But anyway, so, yeah. Now, some people will say, well, if Dana is preoccupied, then that must mean that Megan, because they're in a relationship, must be avoidant. No. Two preoccupied people can absolutely be together. The correlation and the research indicates, and it's kind of hard to lock this down because there's so many people with a variety of different factors that play into their life, but generally speaking, where you are on the insecurity spectrum, you tend to hook up and stay in relationships with people that are generally in that spectrum. Also, if you are more on the spectrum of insecurity, then your relationships tend to be more chaotic. So there's that. There's some research suggesting that avoidant and preoccupied people tend to get attracted to each other and lock in on our relationship because of that complementary fitting. But that's not always the case, for sure. People will say, and sometimes I've said, in a light way, two preoccupied people don't often do well together because they're signaling too much and there's no one to stabilize them. The avoidant person will stabilize them, and the opposite is true, that for avoidant people, they need someone to say something. Otherwise, if two avoidant people, then no one will say anything and they just drift apart. That isn't true, though, is the thing. You can have two avoidant people together. You can have two preoccupied people. The general thing is that when insecure people and secure people date, they tend to not feel compatible. They tend to get upset at each other and end it fairly quickly. A common scenario is the secure person has a greater ability, differentiation-wise, to notice that the other person has a problem, and it's not their personal. The secure person is like, oh, that person is avoiding me or blaming me, and I'm pretty sure that's not my fault. So maybe this isn't good, and then it ends. Anyway, so let's see what happens here. All right, well, let's adjourn there. We have merch, as we always have. We have new tumblers that I like, and these are great. So you can get T-shirts and stickers and posters and all that kind of stuff. And Stacy, my wife, has been updating and making sure all that's. We switched to a different merch provider that is much more reliable and has better stuff. Stacy spent a lot of time researching all that. It seems like it wouldn't be that hard, the merch thing, but it's an extreme headache. So the fact that any creator on YouTube has a merch situation is evidence that they dealt with all those headaches. Anyway. So let's all applaud Stacy for that. And take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.